Welcome into the Vegas Squares podcast, where we discuss all things sports and sports betting. Presented by 12 Ounce Sports Radio. All right, welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. I am in studio, and I got Token Tony on the phone. What's up, Token?
Not much. Ready for some NCAA football.
It is. It's college football time, and a couple games have already been played. We've got a little bit of action to wet our whistle, but there's a big weekend. Obviously, this Saturday there's some big games we'll talk about. There's some games we like, some games we love, and we're going to dive into that in this episode. First, we want to thank our sponsors, 12 Ounce Radio, for putting us on the air, and we want to thank all the guys down there doing big things. Once again, you can listen to us and all the shows at 12OZ Sports Radio, 12ouncesportsradio.com. Also want to thank VGK Pop Sockets for all their support of our podcast, and Chai Poker for all their support of our podcast as well. We appreciate them and all the things they do for us. And excuse me. Token, let's talk college football. Just before we dive into spreads, totals, facts, figures, line movement, etc., let's just kind of look at your outlook on college football this year. Last year, obviously, Bama won the national title, depending on who you ask. I'm more of a kind of say that they're co-national champions with UCF, but it's been kind of nice, I would say, as a UCF fan, to be able to live rent-free inside of the minds of these SEC crazies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. But yeah, in my mind, I absolutely agree with them being co-champions. So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with that, being said, it's like, you guys talked about it on the podcast last week. If they would have been given a chance to play in the playoff as the 4 seed, or if they expanded to 8 as the 8 seed, and they lost, no single UCF fan would be claiming this title for quote unquote title. But to leave an undefeated team, the only undefeated team in college football, out of the playoff, it's been such a crazy ride if you're a fan and you follow this whether you're a fan of college football, whether you're a fan of UCF, whether you're an SEC guy, because it just makes me smile inside a little bit to watch the SEC fans just squirm, and not just the Alabama fans. We're talking like Tennessee guys or Vanderbilt guys, like. Your team shouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
Well, your team shouldn't have been in the SEC for the last 2 decades, but, I mean, here we are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that one.
So, anyways, that's been a fun roller coaster, and I'll tell you what, the guys over at UCF, Danny White, the athletic director, and the rest of his staff are pretty genius when it came to all this. And, hopefully one day when I go back to watch a game there, I'll be able to see that 2017 national champion. That's kind of a cool feeling. So, anywho, Let's start off our picks, because I know I've got picks, you've got picks. We're going to talk about some of the big games coming up this weekend. We're also going to talk about some of the picks we like, some of the picks we're going to bet, and obviously we're going to introduce you. I know if you've been following us on Twitter, you already know about this, but we're going to introduce you to our weekly 14-point teaser provided by William Hill that actually I did pretty well on last year, and I'd like to keep that trend going. So my picks will be given to you. Token Tony's picks will be given to you. Obviously, tail us or fade us, that choice is yours. But we're going to have fun anyways while we talk. So let's start with the big games this weekend. And I guess we'll start with Washington and Auburn. That's one, it's one of the kickoff classics. It's in Atlanta, which is basically in Auburn's backyard. Auburn is a 2-point favorite, total 48 on that one. It's on Saturday in Atlanta, again, like I said. Initial thoughts, Washington traveling across the country, do you think that's going to be any bit of a concern for them?
I believe it will be a slight concern for them, especially it's an opening game for them.
I mean, something they've had 8 months to prepare for. Yeah.
In this spot, I think that gives Auburn a slight edge.
Yeah, I mean, a situation like this where you have, Washington and Auburn, and you're trying to lay it off as a neutral site, And, I mean, I don't know exactly. I don't have a map in front of me, but I think Auburn's within 3 hours of Atlanta, Georgia. So you're eventually you might as well just back up the truck as far as, gathering Auburn fans to make this what appears to be a home game. But Washington's a strong team. You got Myles Gaskin, the running back, who's a Heisman dark horse, who I really like, especially you can get him at 100-1 in some spots. I think Washington's going to come out and it's going to be definitely an interesting proposition. I think they're going to get a game out of this. And Auburn, the question really is the last time we saw Auburn, it was in the Mercedes-Benz or the Georgia Dome, whatever you want to call it, and they were getting beat by UCF.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that was kind of a fun game to watch, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. I watched that game live. It was fun to watch. Now, you have picks that you're going to be giving out at the end of the show. I know we didn't check this, but is this Auburn game or this Washington game one of the picks that you have on your total or on your tally?
It is not, but if I had to pick this game, I kind of would lean towards Washington. I think they're overall the better team, and I think Auburn doesn't play good in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, they obviously lost Kerryon Johnson to the NFL draft, but they do have Jared Stidham coming back, who played quarterback exceptionally well last year. He's looking to be a pro prospect. The odds, anything can change really at that point. What about this total? Do you think, these two, these two teams have decent offenses, pretty good offenses, but their defenses aren't no slouches either. It's a kind of an interesting total, really, at this point. A lot of the games we see, especially SEC football, tends to stay a little lower, but Washington may have something to say about that total.
Yeah, in my mind, I would absolutely lean for the total being over. I see 48.5. I'm not sure what you see on your side, but
yeah, 48.5. It's all relative there.
Yeah, I would lean towards the over. I think these offenses are a little underrated in my mind compared to this total, and I do believe their defenses are pretty good, but I think those offenses will prevail and put up some big scores.
All right, so yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you. I think Washington's probably a good lay here, but with the 2 points, 3 points, or depending on where you find it, I almost feel like I'd like Washington on the money line to come in and kind of maybe with the upset there at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, what I see on the money line is 115 right now, and I think that's really good value.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. All right, well, let's talk about West Virginia and Tennessee. Both teams who I don't know if underachieved is the right word last year, but Tennessee's kind of been in a funk, but they seem to definitely recruit well. Jeremy Pruitt's first game, he is going to travel to Charlotte to face a ranked opponent in West Virginia. The line currently on that is West Virginia minus 9.5. Tennessee has an ability to open up the season hot and tend to fall off, a little bit, as the season progresses. So I wouldn't rule out Tennessee in this spot despite a large spread.
I absolutely was one of my picks on this game was Tennessee for sure. I think they always start off hot, and West Virginia is a big rival, and I think they at least cover. I don't think they're strong enough to pull off the victory, but I think they maybe keep it within a field goal towards the end.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I'm definitely high on Tennessee at this point. Will Grier, though, for West Virginia is definitely a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the nation. Definitely going to be, talked about in next year's draft for the NFL. David Sills, a great receiver who, is able to find open spots for Will Grier to hit him. West Virginia's got high-powered offense. They've lost a few people on defense. It's really hard to say. I mean, effectively winning by double digits at this point in a big game like this is hard. Yeah, I think I'm going to lean with you on Tennessee. I don't know if I have any action. I don't think I'm going to have any action on it, and we'll see as the day goes on. I might be chasing bets, but this one's early on Saturday, so I don't think I'll probably lay too much action on it. But yeah, if I did, I would probably take the 9.5 points my way in a matchup of teams who, yes, they've had 8 months to get ready, but they haven't faced anybody quite yet. A new regime, Tennessee. You're going to have that kind of that amped, charged up feeling. You're not playing basically a road game, so you're not having to worry about that. So I don't know. I mean, Tennessee 9.5 points. I'd take the points right there at that point too. Damn, can't get rid of this frog in my throat.
Yeah, I know that feeling for sure.
So, all right. Well, let's talk about a little bit of what do you call it? Alabama and Louisville. This game last year probably would have had a far bigger market for people watching, and probably a far smaller spread than the 24.5 currently Alabama has to lay. The game is in Orlando at Camping World Stadium. 24.5 is just a gigantic number, but I mean, Alabama's shown that they could cover that in their sleep.
Yeah, this is one that I wouldn't necessarily bet, but I maybe put a teaser on. I would lean towards the Alabama side on that for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the last time we saw Alabama, they were scratching, fighting, clawing to come back into a game. So you're going to have a lot of mixed signals about that, especially since at this point in time, we don't know who's going to start for Alabama as far as quarterback. Are we going to get Jalen Hurts? Are we going to get Tua Tagovailoa, or however you say his name? It's taken me 8 months. I still don't know how to say his name.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if Jalen doesn't start.
See, I'm on the other side. I'd be surprised if Tagovailoa doesn't start. I mean, look what he did in his last appearance. I mean, I understand he's younger at this point. I mean, not at this point. At all points, he's young. He's going to be younger. But I don't see why you don't ride the quote-unquote hot hand, even though it was almost 8 months ago.
Yeah, I could see that as well. But I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not touching this game at all. You're right. Because Alabama could easily truck roll that. I feel like all this talk about Louisville's quarterback. Let me find his name here because I've just lost it. But they're saying he's basically almost better than Lamar Jackson at this point. That's a lofty.
Wow.
That's lofty expectations.
Yeah.
Of course, the freaking internet doesn't want to play ball at this point. Pass. Yeah. Jawan Pass. Or they call him Puma, I guess. But he's supposed to be as athletic, or if not more, than Lamar Jackson, which is saying a lot considering Lamar Jackson was pretty damn multi-talented at that point. So I would probably, again, I'm going to stay away from this game. My interest in this game really would be the total at 62. That seems, with a total such as that, I don't think Alabama can get there by themselves, obviously, because Saban's been a guy who's been known to slam on the brakes, as soon as they get out to a, 5-touchdown lead. So the 62 really tells me that they expect Louisville to be able to put up some points. So I feel like there's a correlation here with Louisville. If Louisville's able to put up points, I see them hanging closer than 25 points to Alabama. Now, I still see Alabama winning, but I mean, I can see Alabama comfortably rolling to a 17, 20-point victory. Because remember, we saw Alabama as the number 4 seed in the playoff, who they did control Clemson, but they had a hard time with Georgia last year until, the second half. Tagovailoa came in, the magic. But they weren't the Alabama steamroll last year that they've been in previous. They had a tough time with their schedule last year. So, I mean, obviously they're the defending champs, but I would lean taking the over on 62. And if you really feel like you have to have some action, I would take the 24.5 points with Louisville, and hope that basically it's a shootout or a situation where they're basically 38.
They pump on the brakes.
Yeah, 38-31 at that point. So I like the over. SEC totals. Obviously Louisville's in the ACC, but SEC teams with totals with SEC teams don't usually get into the 60s like this. So unless you're Missouri,
pretty odd.
So I'm going to take the over. I think Vegas, is trying to get me to believe something. Or trying to get me to believe something that's not real. So I think I'm going to take the over on that game. Probably bet that later because it's a later game. If I have to chase, that'd probably be where I'm going to go put my money on at that point.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a 5 o'clock local time out here, 8 o'clock Eastern prime time game. So.
Yeah, and the last large game of Saturday, not the last game we'll talk about from Saturday's slate, but Michigan and Notre Dame. I know you're not a Michigan fan; you're a Michigan State guy, but this game, this game is a statement game for I think both coaches.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The question is, can this game really derail one of these guys?
I would say not Harbaugh as much as the Notre Dame coach. If Notre Dame does happen to lose, I think it puts more pressure on Notre Dame than if Michigan were to lose.
Yeah, I think Michigan, because they play a conference that has Ohio State and Wisconsin in it, a loss could really set them back in the national championship picture. But it doesn't hurt them necessarily in winning a conference and winning a Rose Bowl. New quarterback, learning a new system, to have to come out and go to South Bend, that's going to put some nerves, especially in a kid. 18, 19, 20-year-old kids are going to have some nerves. I think either team that loses this game sets them back, not terrible. The coaches may be on the hot seat a little bit because, Notre Dame actually had a rebound year last year. Michigan was a little bit down. The injuries really kind of got to him. Brian Kelly, I think, has to make a New Year's Bowl game this year to keep his job. So starting out, especially when you're not in a conference, 0-1, starting out that way, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt Notre Dame more than, and Brian Kelly more than it's going to hurt, Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. So if the ultimate goal is a national title or getting into the college football playoff, Michigan will be doomed with a loss, and Notre Dame might be a little less doomed because of the fact they don't play in conference. They can basically set their schedule. Are they going to have to win by better margins, going forward if they lose the first game? Absolutely, they're going to have to show strength of victory. But Michigan, at least if they lose the first game, they still have, the conference to play for. And if they do run through the Big Ten Conference, there's a chance they could go, to the college football playoff. We saw that the CFP didn't really favor, the Big Ten last year. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and plus early season losses kind of push off in the back if a team just goes on a tear at the end of the season and finishes only with one loss, with it being the first game in a big game.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. It's when you lose sometimes, which may or may not be fair because most teams are, and I think that's what's kind of happening now, is most teams are scheduling these big games that everybody wants in the beginning of the year. Because if they lose, like back in the BCS era, Florida State would lose to Florida, and obviously the last game of the season, in some spots it might have kicked them out of the national title shot right there. But if you lose to them in the first game and pretty much run through the rest of your schedule, the committee is usually, I wouldn't say usually, the committee, they're human. So a what have you done for me lately mentality has been the kind of thing. I mean, it's like the classic case of last year. What was the last thing we saw of Alabama? Well, they didn't have to play their SEC championship game. They saw Auburn lose it. So even though Auburn beat Alabama, they weren't punished for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, as much as they want to say they encompass the whole body of work, it's a lot of it's probably what have you done for me lately. So, getting a game out of like this out of the way early, if you happen to lose it, could definitely be, okay to a guy or to a team like Michigan or Notre Dame. So the total's 47 on that game, and the game's virtually a pick 'em. There's some -1s in certain spots depending on where you look, but for all intents and purposes, it's a pick 'em game. And so I have that as one of my picks, so I'll give that later on in the show. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll go back into Michigan and Notre Dame. So the last game of Saturday that I want to talk about is, and again, it's not a marquee matchup, but it is Oregon State traveling to Ohio State. Ohio State, a 39-point favorite, total 65 in that game. Obviously, we've been talking about it for how many podcasts now. It is going to be Urban Meyer's first of his 3-game suspension. Ryan O'Day is the interim coach. He's going to be calling the plays and working the sidelines. And you have, I wouldn't say a new quarterback, but you have a quarterback who has very limited action at this point because he didn't play a whole lot last year. I believe his name is Dwayne Haskins. Or Hopkins. I think it's Dwayne Haskins, but I might be Hopkins. So, I mean, laying 40 points is a huge number. I understand Oregon. Oregon State's a Power 5 team. Not saying they're a very good Power 5 team, but nonetheless, laying 40 points with all the distractions that are going on, I have a hard time. I would have a hard time giving those points if I was betting.
Yes, and I know there's been some big action around town on actually Ohio State covering.
Okay.
I was reading an article earlier that altogether around town between Westgate, South Point, and a few other spots, there's been over 6 figures in bets, including a parlay, with Ohio State covering.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's just for me really hard, even to make a play on it. It's probably bad value to even really make any kind of play on it because, a Power 5 team, even if they are a doormat, Oregon State shouldn't go out there and get beat by 5, almost 6 touchdowns. I just don't see it happening.
They shouldn't, but, I mean, it was Ohio State, but it is without Urban Meyer, so.
Right, and I'm sure this team is talented enough, and they've studied enough, and they've practiced enough for the last 8 months to know, basically, they're probably going to run a vanilla game plan. They're going to beat this team. We know that just based on talent alone. The question would be is how do we defeat our opponents, stay healthy, and worry about TCU without our leader? I think that's the thing. And they even may get caught, looking ahead at some of, the Rutgers or the Oregon State, and not looking ahead to the point where they're going to lose a game. But they're, I think these 2 to 3 games, depending on how they approach the TCU game, they're really just in damage control. I mean, I'm sure, as much as they say, Urban's suspended, I'm sure he has contact, or at least indirect contact, with how he wants things to go down. I don't think he wants any injuries. I don't think he wants anybody to really have any problems. I think they're going to run a very vanilla game plan, and 39 is a big number. I mean, if they win by 5 touchdowns, that's still a hell of a game, but they don't cover.
Yeah, which is pretty bad if you're trying to lay that big number. So.
Yeah, I just think, with all the distraction, with everything that's happened, to have to go out there and lay, 5.5 touchdowns is probably not, a wise investment. But you know what? It sounds like what you said. The people are still laying it, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's move into the Sunday game. I believe it's the only game. Miami versus LSU in Jerry World. It's 3.5 in favor of Miami. Total 47. It's going to be the only game on, so these boys, it's going to be the only game on, so these guys are going to get a lot of eyeballs at that point because the NFL hasn't started yet. Miami was the darling for about 10 weeks last year, and then 3 straight losses. Kind of everybody forgot about them. LSU, they definitely aren't what they used to be. That's an easy thing to say, obviously, I know, but their ability, their talent is there. I don't know if they have the right coach in place as far as Ed Orgeron, but it's an interesting number. That obviously, anytime you have to play that hook, the 3.5, it always gets tough. So LSU doesn't have to travel as far as Miami does. I don't know, necessarily if any team is more talented than the other at this point. So my gut feeling would be basically take the team that had to travel less.
I take LSU plus 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the safest bet. I mean, it's hard in my mind to lay 3.5 with Miami or even give up 50 extra and take the money line at minus 160.
Mm-hmm.
I would take the 3.5 with LSU to cover. So,
yeah, I think that hook's really what makes me feel about it. LSU. If you look at trends, LSU is 9-3 versus Miami in program history, although they haven't actually met. They've met once since 1988, and that was in the Peach Bowl in 2005, and LSU beat them 40-3. So, currently there's not really a lot of information to go off of. LSU's got a new quarterback. Will it work? Will it work with them? Miami has a good offense. Their offensive line is pretty decent. They don't really have a quarterback at this point. It's been kind of the Malik Rozier show. However, he had a disappointing end to 2017. So, it's not clear if he's going to have a short leash because his accuracy is he's wildly inconsistent. I believe last year, if I'm looking right, he only completed 54% of his passes last year. So that's not very good. So we'll have to see.
No, that's a very low number, especially in college football.
Yeah, absolutely. So my thoughts here are, I think it's going to be a close game. I think both teams, talent-wise, on the field are pretty neck and neck. Both offenses are a little bit of a mystery. We have a first-time starter at LSU. We have Malik Rozier, who has shown flashes of being a great quarterback. I just think the hook's gonna be a factor. I think it's, like a 21, or excuse me, like a 23-21 or 23-20 kind of game where it's, I think Miami still probably would win this game, but I think it's going to be closer than people would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think this line might even move in favor of betting LSU, so if you wait until probably later on Saturday with all the action kind of being done on Saturday, I think this line might even move to 4.5, just because of Miami's record last year and the public money kind of coming in on it.
So you're saying you think based on your prediction of line movement, you think if you want LSU, you need to get it now?
No, wait until later tomorrow, I would say.
Or, yeah, you said Miami's line's going to go. My apologies, yeah. So if you like Miami, you think you should get it now?
If you like Miami, I would go on it right now. If not, I would wait to bet it and probably take it later on the day on Saturday.
All right, let's talk Labor Day football. Virginia Tech and Florida State. A game that used to be one of the marquee matchups back in Beamer and Bowden days. They actually met in the 1999 National Championship where Florida State won. And they beat, you remember back then, they beat Michael Vick in the Sugar Bowl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is right.
So, both teams are kind of middle-of-the-road contenders in the ACC. Clemson's the sexy pick. Miami is, also kind of a hot team with a little bit of firepower. But these two teams last year and this year aren't receiving a lot of love. I mean, everybody kind of has been talking about Willie Taggart and, the new coach at Florida State and Jimbo leaving. But no one's really giving them a real shot to definitely contend. But right now we're just talking about this game. The line is 7. FSU is favored by a touchdown, total 55.5. It definitely makes for an interesting matchup to close out week 1 of college football. We got Deondre Francois, the Florida State quarterback, coming off of a nasty knee injury in the first game last year where he tore his ACL. Cam Akers is a running back for Florida State who, in his freshman year, really tore up the scene. I think he has a chance maybe next year or his senior year to definitely be a Heisman candidate down the road. Maybe this year if things, kind of get crazy. But Virginia Tech's always been, really tough as far as an opponent, no matter what year they seem to be in. This is a hard number. I don't know if FSU is as good as they're getting for 7 points, but at the same time, it's really hard to say with a defense who is pretty good and basically no offense as far as Virginia Tech goes. It's hard to say if they can really keep it within a touchdown because, as good as defenses can be, you got to back them up with an offense and field position. So I just don't know if Virginia Tech has anything on the offensive side of the ball.
The only thing I like about Virginia Tech in this game is their speed. They usually tend to be a little more faster than the average opponent, and that's one thing that might worry me about laying the favorite in this. But it is Virginia Tech, and their defense looked pretty bad last year, and it didn't look like it improved with scouting too much. So
Virginia Tech actually was a really good defense. They averaged only giving up less than 100 yards on the ground, and overall they only gave up about 360 yards through the air. Their aerial attack was okay. They lose. I know Tremaine Edwards was a first-round pick out of Virginia Tech. So they're returning 9 defensive starters, so they're going to be okay. The defense is not really what I'm worried about. Is can they consistently put together long drives on offense or even enough points to hang up with. I mean, Francois coming back, he played really well before he got hurt. We'll see. I mean, it's basically the first game for Taggart, so we'll see what he can do. Because, as a Florida State fan, we have a guy who has a career sub 500 record, replacing a guy who won a national championship. So he's definitely going to want to come out and show out. Now, is that to the tune of winning and covering? Yeah, we'll see. So I don't have this in my picks, but if I had to lay a number, I probably would err on the side of taking the points with Virginia Tech, just because Virginia Tech's that sneaky team that always, again, I don't know if they can hang, but if they're going to hang, they're going to hang it within the 7. I think it's going to be, 27-24 kind of game.
Okay. This one I would actually lay the 7 on Florida State. I would absolutely think they cover. I think Francois is going to be there to prove why he's the quarterback of the future for them, and hopefully he just doesn't get hurt. I mean,
yeah,
that was a devastating blow for that team last year.
Yeah, you gotta imagine he needs to take 1 or 2 hits to kind of get back into the game action and game speed, because he hasn't played in a year at this point. So, all right, well, let's. I'm going to take a look at some of these games. Obviously, not the marquee matchups, or maybe you do have some marquee matchups. I take a look at when you look down the list of kind of the action going. There's some of these games that you're not really willing to put, your money on, but you kind of like them, and they may be something you bet. God forbid you have to chase your action, or even if something you see you get up a little bit, you decide you want to sprinkle a little bit on these guys. Anything in the card you see over the next 3 days that you really have an interest in basically laying. You're not quite ready to bet it, but you're kind of on your likes right now.
One thing that screams to me was one of the games that we talked about earlier, and that was in Tennessee. I mean, I would lean more towards betting that than worrisome about that game.
Okay.
Another one that just would be a little worrisome to bet for me would be Texas to cover 13.5. But
yeah, I mean,
that'd be one that I would keep in mind.
Maryland's program's in such disarray, but I don't know if Texas is good enough to really take advantage of something like that. I think Texas will win that game, but covering 2 touchdowns might be a little tough.
Yes.
Couple I have on my card that I'm not ready to fire on quite yet. I'm on the like spot right now. I like Marshall, a 2-point road favorite against Miami of Ohio, whose quarterback has left. So Miami of Ohio is kind of in a regenerating period. Marshall, halfway decent team. I think they can sneak out a road win, 3-point road win or better. I like Houston at Rice, but I don't know if I like the 26. I think Houston can get out of the gates fast. May rest starters going in, so I'm going to take the 15.5 first half line. I like that as well. UMass put up a fuck ton of points in the unofficial week 1 of the college football season against Boston College, who notoriously has a good defense. I don't think UMass can do the same thing again. The over-under is 65. I think that number is being put out there based on the last time UMass took the field. I like the under 65 in that spot because I don't think Boston College is going to give up that many points, and I don't think they can score that many points. So the under 65 in that spot is interesting to me. A lot of people,
yeah, that sounds like a good play on that part.
Yeah, a lot of people like Boise having to go into Troy. Troy, this team beat LSU last year, and they're returning virtually their entire team. Troy's getting 10 points at home against a team that has to come across the country and into Alabama. I like Troy getting the 10 and possibly an upset there outright. Middle Tennessee State's getting 3 points to go to Vandy. Middle Tennessee State's a really, really tough Conference USA opponent. They could be challenging for the Conference USA title against Florida Atlantic. So I'll take the 3 points there at Vandy, who's never really been a great team. I don't know a lot about that. When I looked at that, it kind of screamed to me, grab the points. So that's kind of where I'm in the like spot. I don't have any real theoretical analysis to that one. When I looked at it, it seemed to kind of hit me that I liked that. And another one I liked, kind of my last of my likes, was Illinois laying 16 versus Kent State. Illinois, basically, this is Lovie Smith's last hurrah. I think his team has actually improved based on the things that I've read. And Kent State's not anything of a threat. I think they can win that game by 24 points. So I'll take them to cover 16 at that point.
Sounds good. Another one that I was just looking at would be the matchup between Bowling Green and Oregon. I think Oregon's going to be a high-power offense, definitely put up some big numbers. I actually think they would possibly cover this game.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm trying to find where that number. I think it was like 33 last I saw.
I see 32.5 right now. So yeah.
Okay. So,
right around that wheelhouse.
Yeah. So, I just don't know what I can come to expect out of Oregon. I'm not saying it's a bad lay. I just don't know what what I'm going to get. And they're playing. Who did we say they were playing? Bowling Green. Yeah, I don't know anything about them. So there's a chance they could run over them by 35 points. I don't think that's a bad bet. If you're going to lay on one side or the other, you're going to lay on the high-powered offense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to look at a situation where Oregon's another team with a new head coach and a new offensive system. So, while the run and gun and the up and down the field and the no huddle may have been working, I don't know the new coach's. I don't even know who the new coach is, and I don't know his offensive philosophy. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of why do I keep saying Auburn? What kind of Oregon team, exists nowadays? Chip Kelly and all those guys who were there are gone. Willie Taggart's obviously at Florida State. So, Florida State. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Willie Taggart is now at Florida State. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of offensive philosophy Oregon comes out with this year. So I don't think it's a terrible bet. I just don't know what to expect out of the team that I'm laying 32 points on.
Fair enough.
So, all right, well, let's get down to the ones we are going to put some money on, because I'm definitely interested to hear yours. I haven't heard yours yet, so I'm going to go. We're going to go one at a time. I'll tell you my first pick that I'm ready to fire. I'm going to actually go fire it today. And I am going to take 37 points for Western Kentucky against Wisconsin. I'm going to take WKU plus 37. They have a good quarterback. They have a halfway decent defense. Again, they're in Conference USA. They're not going to be anywhere in contention in this game, but I think they can keep it within 28 to 35 points.
Okay. Seems realistic. My first pick, which I already have put some money on, which is Notre Dame. I really like that marquee matchup, and I believe Notre Dame has everything to lose this game compared to Michigan.
All right. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because my second pick actually also is Notre Dame. I think they're more talented. The coaching may come through in this, and I don't know if Brian Kelly's a better coach, but I think he's got more talent on his team. They're at home to open the season. It's going to be crazy. And while I understand what you're saying with the more pressure, I don't necessarily agree with that as far as a tremendous amount. But I think Notre Dame should win this game overall. So I agree with you. That's another one of my picks, is Notre Dame as a pick 'em over Michigan at that point.
Sounds good. My second pick that I'm still kind of debating on how much I should put on. I like it, but I just don't love it right now, and that's Nebraska minus 26 with Scott Frost as their new head coach.
Okay. All right. So
I think with that defense, they'll keep Akron to a low score. They'll put up some big, high-powered offensive numbers. They got a good, strong running back right now, and I think they could easily cover the 26.
Fair enough. My next pick is Ole Miss. I'm going to lay the money line plus 120 against Texas Tech. The spread is 2 to 2.5, depending on where you look. I think Ole Miss is better than Texas Tech, just straight up on paper. So I'm going to take Ole Miss with the plus 120 to beat Texas Tech.
All right. Another one that I was leaning towards is going to be Washington State. I think with Wyoming losing their quarterback, seems like they're going to be in a big spot to make a big improvement over the last year that they had. I think Washington State's all around a good team, and they keep this one tight, but they cover the one.
Okay, fair enough. The fourth of my 5 picks, we talked about the Florida State-Virginia Tech game. I am going to take the under in that game. I talked about it was about a 27-24 game or less. I think the game's going to be in the 20s. And as long as it's not 29-28, I should be good at that point with the under. So I am going to take the under 55.5 in the Florida State-Virginia Tech game. In fact, I've already actually bet that game. My last pick, I'll let you know, pick here is the Fighting Lane Kiffins. I think with Kyler Murray at Oklahoma, he's going to struggle out of the gate a little bit, especially, they call him a dual-threat quarterback. We haven't really seen his arm. Chances are his arm's not completely solid at this point. Florida Atlantic's getting 21.5 points. And before I even saw the line, I said, Oklahoma will probably win this game by 3 touchdowns. So when I saw the hook, just something about Lane Kiffin makes me want to bet on him. So I'll take the 21.5 points with FAU. And hopefully maybe they could put a scare into him in the Big House.
They could possibly do that, yeah. The line that I see currently right now at Westgate is 20.5.
Oh, so it's already been bet down.
Yeah.
Wow. So, all right, well, those are our picks we're going to put money on already. Well, Gary showed you our likes. We talked about the big games. Now we want to introduce you, if you're not familiar, to what I like to do every year in the NFL, both and college. I find more success in the college game. I feel like the college game is a little more predictable. That way, moving the line. What are you doing?
Oh, sorry.
I find the college game's a little more predictable, so moving the line 14 points is highly advantageous. I believe I hit them at almost an 80% clip last year, which is good because you got to kind of hit them as the 14-point teaser at minus 200 odds at that point. So I'm going to give you the 4 teams that I have and their original spread and what it's going to move to. We talked about Ohio State and Oregon State earlier. Oregon State getting 39.5 points. I am going to move Oregon State to a plus 53 at that point. So I think if I already think Oregon State can cover the 39, adding 14 more points, I think 53. I think Ohio State's going to have a conservative game plan. So 53 points, I'm not going to really sweat that too much.
If they somehow get up 40 or something, I'd easily see them resting a couple players here and there. So
right. The second on my teaser is Notre Dame. As a pick 'em right now, I'm going to move them to plus 14. You and I both have them. I've already bet them as far as monetary on the pick. They're a home team right now, and I already think they're going to win. But even if they don't, I think this game's going to be close, and I can't see them losing by more than 2 touchdowns at home. So getting the 14-point cushion makes me feel really good, especially since I think they're going to win this game outright. The third team I have is USC. They're currently a 26.5-point favorite against UNLV. UNLV is a train wreck. They're not very good. I think USC can definitely cover 12.5 points at that point. So I'm going to move that line from 26.5 to 12.5. I can see them winning by 2+ touchdowns. So I'll take the 12.5, or I'll lay the 12.5. Excuse me. And Hawaii is a 10-point dog at home, with Navy having to come all the way across and overseas to play them. I think Navy's going to win the game. I think Navy would cover 10. I just don't think they can cover 24, so you're going to give me the Rainbow Warriors of Hawaii with 24 points. So to recap, 14-point teaser, I have Oregon State 53, plus 53, USC minus 12.5, Notre Dame plus 14, and Hawaii plus 24 points.
Sounds really good.
So, well, this was the first of our picks show. We've never done one of these before. We've always kind of just talked about sports and how they relate to betting. So I'm definitely interested in keeping track of these picks. And we'll probably post something on our website that kind of keeps a tracker. And maybe you and I will have a little prop bet to see who does better. I definitely know we're going to do something in the NFL. We're definitely going to have a picking contest in the NFL.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, all right, cool. Is there anything else you want to talk about college football before we sign off?
Not really. Just expecting kind of mellow week 1 to start off, and hopefully it leads to a good, strong ending of the season with a few controversies in the playoff picture.
There's always going to be controversy no matter how far you expand this. When it was 2, the third guy was pissed. When it's 4, the fifth guy's pissed. Or sometimes in UCF's case, the ninth guy's pissed. When it's 8, the 9th and 10th guys are pissed. There's always going to be. So I think it goes without saying that there's going to be no shortage of controversial moves. I really think another controversy would be, if UCF ran the table again, how do you leave them out after going 25-0?
Yeah.
And I've always campaigned it should be what you do that year. Okay, fine. They didn't put UCF in after getting a 13-0 season. Now, how about 25-0 in their last 25 games? I think you can't look away. I mean, and the thing is there may be a team who is ranked ahead of UCF, at the time, and in the playoff committee has to put UCF in because they just feel like it's the thing to do after a 25-0 2-season stretch. And there may be a team that may have gone 12-1, won the Pac-12 or won the Big Ten, that gets left out because of that. So it's definitely going to make for a fun season, especially if they run the table again. That'd be fun to watch.
Absolutely, yeah. I know they won yesterday, so.
Yes, they did. They won, and they covered, and they just barely hit the over. So
There you go.
All right. Well, we'll be signing off, and we definitely every Friday. If you're listening on 12 Ounce Sports Radio, you're going to hear this on Saturday mornings right before the game. We do record on Friday and put it up on our website, vegassquares.com, on Friday. So depending on where you listen, you'll catch these on Friday or Saturday, and we definitely appreciate you tuning in. Thanks again to 12 Ounce Sports, VGK Pop Sockets, and Chai Poker for looking out for us, putting our stuff on the radio, and just being supportive of what we do here. Again, tail us or fade us. You got all our picks. We're definitely interested and excited, and hopefully we can sweep the board in week 1 of college football. So for Token Tony, I am Aaron. We appreciate you listening again, and we will catch you on the next episode.